Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. Scott, we are here on a Victory Monday, and boy, does it feel good because it was in doubt for a little bit. Let's just be honest. It was very much in doubt yesterday.
Yeah.
If that result hadn't changed at halftime, our post-game podcast would have been one of biblical proportions, I think, Scott. That would have been the live podcast to be tuned in for, and not in a good way.
Well, it would have either been incredibly empty in terms of the chat room with everyone just
it would have been full. People would have been
just deciding, like, I'm not dealing with this. It's the holiday season, or it would have been really full, like you said. So yeah. Well, the thing is it is Victory Monday. We're going to answer a lot of questions. We want to hear from you, Pewter Nation, Buccaneer fans out there. What are your thoughts on this team? So if you can, join us in the chat, ask us some questions. We're here to answer them all day. And we're also here to put up some of your thoughtful comments. And we're happy to take some of your super chats. We had some fantastic super chat donations yesterday. Even from a Falcons fan who was kind enough. I think he hit us with like 4 super chats. So that was really cool. The one thing that is super important that we start off our podcast with every time is the fact that John, these podcasts, the Pewter Report podcast, powered by Celsius. Let's go. Another great show on tap today, sponsored by our friends at Celsius. And, the thing, John, is we say it all the time, and it's so true. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy. After this podcast, we talked about yesterday, you know what I'm doing? I'm getting ready to smash this Celsius BCAA Plus Energy Blood Orange Lemonade. It's a really good flavor. Not too sweet, not too tart. And then I'm going to go hit my workout for the day. So this is going to give me those electrolytes that I need, and it's going to fuel my recovery as well. So if you're looking for the difference between what John has and what he was holding up, the sparkling grape, that's more of the energy drink. It is just sparkling, and it's got that kind of carbonated flavor to it. This one is not sparkling. So if you don't like sparkling beverages, give this line of Celsius a try. Where could you find these wonderful energy drinks? Well, the best place is Celsius.com. You can go to Celsius.com, hit that store locator, and then find the nearest place that sells Celsius near you. If you want to go to PewterReport.com, which we, of course, recommend because all of our great stories are there. So when you're there reading Bucs News, click on the Celsius banners. They're going to take you to Amazon, where you can buy those in bulk. And if you're not quite sure which flavor you want to try, well, get the variety pack. And then that way you can try a whole bunch, and then you can make your informed decision.
That's the way to go.
When you buy in bulk, you see yeah.
Absolutely. That's the way to go. Because honestly, the coverage, all of them, if you put them all together, like, they cover so many different flavors, and all of them been good so far. I literally haven't had one that I dislike. So I've got to start branching out and trying to find one I don't like. So that I can bring some honesty to this podcast, but I don't know if there is one. So we'll see. I'll keep everybody updated on it as I try different flavors. But so far, I've tried 7 flavors, I think. Watermelon?
Yeah,
that's the one.
My wife loves it. That's her favorite. So my wife actually turned me on to the Celsius with her watermelon, and I was like, yeah. She's like, but they have other flavors. I'm like, all right, and I tried orange and grape. And I was like, wow, these two are fantastic. I see you're crushing the grape today. Mark Fisher, come on, everybody. 1 case a month. It's a good product. I like the grape and support the average you love. Might be a typo. The podcast.
I don't know what the last part means, but thank you, Mark. And then Anthony Papp, Celsius, babe. Let's go. Love it.
Yeah.
And Edward says he missed the podcast yesterday. It was a good show. It was a great show. If you haven't seen yesterday's podcast, definitely go back and check out yesterday's show. It was awesome. We talked about a ton of different stuff. We covered a lot of ground, as people say that I always like to say. And we're going to cover a lot of ground on today's show as well. We've got Pro Bowl votes coming out tonight, our Pro Bowl selections coming out tonight. Always a process, Scott, that is sure to infuriate everyone. from those of you who just care about getting it right, to those of you who are Bucs fans and want to see your favorite players in the game, to those of you who think about it a little bit more and say, man, we know this is going to affect the contract conversations and, the player legacy conversations and, the Hall of Fame conversations, maybe not for anybody in the Bucs. I mean, but if Lavonte David had made the Pro Bowl all the times he should have earlier in his career, then maybe it would affect it. So, we know that the Pro Bowl has that type of impact, even though the process is horrible. So I think, Scott, it's one of the most frustrating days of the year for somebody like me. I'm like kind of type A. I care about these things, right? I want things to be done well. I don't want to just check the box. And so it drives me crazy every year at the Pro Bowl. And then there's the people who are like, I don't know why we even pay attention to the Pro Bowl. We pay attention because it matters. You talk to agents, it's part of the contract conversation. So it's frustrating to me.
Really what it does is it gets you into the Hall of Fame. If you have X amount of those, it certainly helps build your case. Now, for a player like Mike Allstott, who I think went to 5 or 6 Pro Bowls, he's not going to get into the Hall of Fame. But it certainly helps build your resume for players that are Hall of Fame worthy. And certainly – it helps out around contract time. I mean, let's face it. A lot of these agents will put those Pro Bowl incentives in there. John, I got to admit, I'm an old school guy. I'm about 18 years older than you, even though I don't look it. But there was a time when the Pro Bowl game actually was a hell of a game. These guys tackled. Drew Brees got hurt in the game. Matter of fact, Leroy Selman ended his career with a back injury in the Pro Bowl. There have been players that have been ejected from the Pro Bowl. It used to be a full-on game. Then it turned into this kind of nilly-willy flag football fest that is just kind of ridiculous. But it used to be a full-on game. And listen, I understand we've taken huge leaps forward as an NFL product in making the game safer. Okay, but there was a time when it used to be a fun, entertaining game to watch. Now, they've scrapped it this year because of COVID. I understand why. If they never play the Pro Bowl again, I don't care. You can just say it's a distinction, just like the All-Pro, right? But the game itself has gotten to the point where it's just ridiculous. I say screw the game. Keep the little, it's a popularity contest is really all it is. I mean, the All-Pro voting, I think, carries a little bit more weight. But John, you had an idea the other day. You and I were talking about this of ways that you'd like to see the Pro Bowl have a little bit more teeth and credibility to it. Talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I did want to answer Brandon's question here. He's asked if Celsius were available in Canada, and I believe that they are, Brandon. Based on looking it up, I believe that they are. So you can Google it and look into it a little bit more. I haven't looked into detail, but I'm pretty sure you can still get them in Canada. I think the Pro Bowl process is just so bad because they allow fans to, fans are a third of the voting, players and coaches are a third of the voting. And I mean, look at the NFL Network Top 100 or whatever. Every year, it's just not a very good list. And players and coaches, they are the ones that have problems with it when it comes out. I'm like, well, y'all are the ones that voted, but some don't vote and most don't vote. And then you vote based on, we played this team and this guy had a great game, so I'm voting for him. Well, that doesn't mean his other 15 games could have sucked. And so the process is just really bad. We need to basically remove everyone from the process that currently participates in it and basically make it a totally different group of people. The only people who don't have a say in it really, unless we vote as fans, are the media. And I'm not saying the media necessarily knows what they're talking about all the time, but we need to pick people who do know what they're talking about. They don't even have to necessarily be media people. They could be a former coach or a former player, but we're like that want to be a part of a committee. Make a committee of 50 people, make them accountable, literally, like check their hours in a database of tape to make sure that they're studying these players. Like I would just like to make official, you know what I mean? That way, when the list comes out, it's a big deal, and there's a lot of respect. Now, people still complain, but there is a credibility behind the process and accountability behind the process that just isn't there at all right now. I mean, I love fans to death, but you're not qualified to vote on the Pro Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so.
It's a popularity.
Look, Alex Kappa is literally leading voting.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a bunch of examples. I mean, Zach Cunningham for the Texans is having. Yeah, Alex Kappa, Zach Cunningham for the Texans is having one of the worst seasons. It's a mess. I mean, Kappa's only doing it, and Greg Allman literally wrote an article about this. Kappa's literally only leading the voting because he's at the top of the list alphabetically, and fans are just literally going through guards and tackles and just clicking the first guy. I mean, it's just, come on, and that's a third of the vote though. So I mean, players and coaches probably won't vote for Kappa. But by the way, Kappa's having a really good season, Scott. So I'm going to totally backtrack on what I was saying before there, because I think, if watching Kappa against Atlanta, which might have been his best game of the season, I was just like, man, this guy really is becoming a player before our eyes. There have been how many times have we pulled up a Kappa clip where we were just like, wow, he got destroyed this season. I mean, that was the first 2 years, right? He just couldn't match guys straight, but it just hasn't happened this year. Look at this rep of him against Grady Jarrett. He just buries Grady Jarrett. Look at this play.
He's your right
there
guard.
He is right guard.
Last time I checked, Grady Jarrett's a pretty good player, right? I mean, he's a Pro Bowl guy. I mean,
really good player. Elite player, Yeah. I mean, and Kappa was saying, so, I don't want to rip on Kappa. He's playing great, but if Ali Marpet doesn't make it, might have to throw some things. I mean, I think he will make it. But so here's my question to you, Scott. Here's my question to you.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about Levante David, but which Bucs do you think do make the Pro Bowl this year? Are there guys that you say they're locks and they're going to make it based on either the competition in the NFC or the way they've played this season?
I really don't know, because I think, and I'm going to side with Mark Cook on this one a little bit. We've had some off-camera discussions about this, right, in our Peter Report group chat. The thing is, the Buccaneers have had a lot of primetime games this year. The problem is they've lost most of those primetime games, and a lot of the guys that probably wanted to or needed to make like a big time play to really show up and show out, they really didn't, and so I'm just a little concerned that there's not that there isn't like those signature plays, those big time moments on a big stage. And like, as much as I love Levante David,
good point.
And you know what, I got to backtrack a little bit. I mean, Levante's numbers actually do stack up pretty well in the NFC. The problem is Levante David has been snubbed so many times that he doesn't have that gravitas, the credibility. He's not that household name because of that. And some guys make it just due to reputation.
Like Bobby Wagner could have a down year, right?
Right. I mean, even Luke Kuechly. There was a couple of years Luke Kuechly literally missed like 7 games and made it over Levante David, who played at like 14 or 15. And it's just like, that's wrong. But the problem is typically over the course of the Pro Bowl, in my 25 years of covering the NFL, it goes something like this. The year that you have the season, the Pro Bowl caliber season, and you've never been in, usually you don't get in, right? But then the next year, people remember, oh, he was snubbed, so he gets to go in this year, as long as you have a similar type year. Now, for someone like Shaq Barrett, see, last year, if Shaq Barrett had 13 sacks, he wouldn't have made it, right?
Right, I agree with you.
I mean, he had to get like 18, 19, he ended up with 19 and a half. He had to get 19 and a half sacks to make it, because you can't leave the all-time leading sacker in the 2019 season off of the list. So that's the problem, I think, with some of these guys. Like Carlton Davis, I think, has had a Pro Bowl caliber year. The problem is, in what game did Carlton Davis really show up? The Thursday night game against the Bears, right? He had interception, played really well. That's a Thursday night game. Who was watching, right?
He had the pick in the Giants game too.
He did.
It wasn't a great play. It didn't have to be a great play to it was a bad throw by Jones, but that was a Monday night game or a Sunday night game. It was a night game.
So you've got New York watching, but who else, right? With the Giants being down, right? The Giants not having a good year, with the Giants being down, and the Buccaneers, having some more appeal now. What I'm saying is that didn't really happen in the Packers game. It didn't really happen on Sunday night against the Saints, where it's Drew Brees and Tom Brady. So I think that's the problem. I wouldn't be surprised if literally just 2 Buccaneers made it this year, or you could end up seeing 5. Who? I don't know. I think Tom Brady makes it based on the fact he's Tom Brady. He's having a really good year. I think
NFC too. Yeah, NFC quarterbacks. I think it's like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and then there's kind of like
Brady. I think it's Brady. So I think Brady makes it, and the other guys, gosh, I really don't. I don't know. I think Carlton Davis deserves it. I would put Tristan Wirfs in there, but again, this is one of those things. Wirfs is a rookie; he's not going to make it this year, but next year he'll make it as long as he has a type season.
Right? Right. I think you're onto it for sure, Scott. I think that there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Like there isn't always the case that players make it in their most deserving year. Sometimes the credibility kind of catches up with them, and they might be good, but they might not be totally great at that time. So let's jump back to the Pro Bowl discussion in a second, because I want to touch on these two things before we get to Stefan's question here and his super chat donation. Definitely want to recognize Eric giving the $10 over in the super chat. Eric is just awesome. He's awesome, dude. He's getting ready for his deployment. He's missed some of the live shows, and we miss having him on here for sure. Want you to stay safe, Eric, for sure. We will be praying and thinking of you for sure, and definitely touching base as often as possible. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And never forget Rodney Adams over Stacey Coley. That's way back in the day reference, Scott, to Trevor and I on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. I think when we were first starting out, and then we had a debate over Rodney Adams or Stacey Coley. Neither of them ended up doing anything, I think. Yeah. But I don't even remember who was on what side of the debate, but Eric always remembers and reminds me. So appreciate the heck out of you, man. You take care of yourself and you stay safe. This whole chat appreciates you for sure. If we could send you a super chat, we would for sure. So we appreciate you. Stefan, good question here. If we could go back in time, would we still have signed AB and Fournette, Scott, considering distractions and offensive continuity issues? Love the pod, boys. Appreciate you, Stefan. What would you do? What would you say to this? I think everybody knows my answer, but
well, the interesting thing is I don't mind the AB signing, because I was here last year. I saw Mike Evans go down with the hamstring, and then in Detroit, of all places, Chris Godwin and Scotty Miller both out for the year with hamstrings. So by the time week 16 and 17 rolled around, Jameis Winston was thrown to Brashard Perriman and Scrub McGee. I mean, that was it. There wasn't anybody else to throw the ball to. And so
Brashard Perriman got paid off those 3 weeks.
and he stepped up. The problem is it wasn't enough. And the Buccaneers lost 2 games by an overtime touchdown, pick 6 by Deion Jones in week 17 against the Falcons, and then by 3 points against the Houston Texans. But here's the thing. It's kind of like, do you want to? It's like you're in Florida now. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can buy a cruise, John, because I'm sure you and your family are going to take cruises at some point in time. They got them in Cape Canaveral. They got them in Tampa. You can leave out of Miami. If you want to jump on a cruise, there's 2 ways to go about doing it. Number 1, you want to book your cruise early, right? So you're reserved a spot on the cruise. And number 2, you can wait until the last minute and score a hell of a deal by buying some remnant space, right? Because when the ship's about 80-90% full, and it's about 3 days before they're leaving, they're going to put everything on sale, try to fill that bad boy up, right? So that's it. So what the Buccaneers did was with Fournette was they went out and bought early, right? Not maybe knowing that a player like Le'Veon Bell, who probably would have been a better fit, would have been available later on. So it's kind of a gamble that you take there. I don't mind the Antonio Brown signing. A lot of people think I hate Antonio Brown. I don't. I just want to be productive. Right. I want to see the Antonio Brown we saw yesterday against the Falcons. Fournette, at the time, I thought it was a decent signing because you were getting close to the start of football season at that time. I thought they needed another running back. I was actually more excited, believe it or not, about the Fournette signing than I was even LaShawn McCoy, because I didn't think McCoy had a lot left in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think everybody knows I wouldn't have signed Fournette. I would have probably waited or just found another running back option. But again, they didn't pay either of these guys hardly anything. So in that way, like, it's not a big deal. I'm saying what I would have probably done, but it isn't the end of the world to me that either happened. Some of the situational usage, like Fournette getting almost 20 touches yesterday, was pretty frustrating. I think when there's so many. I mean, think about all the players on the team that could be getting those touches. It's like. We've talked about this a little bit, Scott, this season. Like, there are very strange uses of isolation of certain personnel in this offense. Nate Tice pointed one out on Twitter last night. He's like, "Oh, I have all these weapons. Who am I going to isolate on this post pattern? Let's isolate Cam Brate." I'm just, and Cam Brate makes the play, and it's fine. Brady delivers it. It's perfect. It's great. But it's like, okay, if we get the ball in the hands of a more dynamic player here, then maybe we break a tackle and turn this into some yak. And so it's just, I mean, we saw with the 3 tight ends looks we've talked about the last couple of weeks, like it's like a clutch down and they're going 13 personnel. You know, we've got we're driving, you know, the Bucs are driving, got a huge 2nd down and 10, you know, to go, and they're giving the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn on a draw play. It's just like, what? Like these are the guys like in the clutch moment. I mean, you haven't got anything going on offense. You've had 4 drives all out, and now you're giving the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn and a gotta have it play. Like again, it's like it's blocked. It's there. The surface they're running to is great. Like it was a good play call, honestly, even though I don't like running on 2nd and 10. It was the Falcons were giving it to him the way they were lined up. I mean, they had 3 guys to the Ryan Jensen's left lined up, 3 defensive linemen. They had 1 guy and a walked up linebacker. I mean, it was blocked up perfectly. And Wirfs got pushed back a tiny bit, but Vaughn just was slow and fell down, basically. I mean, you got to get your feet.
Keep in mind, they threw the ball one time to Keyshawn Vaughn. He dropped it.
Yeah. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn's had 8 targets this season. He dropped straight up 3 of them. Yeah. He bobbled 1 and then ended up catching it, but he was out of bounds, which I count that as a drop against the Bears. And then he fumbled 1 against the Bears as well. So, I mean, I want the guy to play. Like I honestly, his run was for 3 yards the other day, and he made guys miss at the line of scrimmage on a poorly blocked play in a way other guys haven't. It was 1 carry. You know, I would love to see him run the ball more, but
I would like to see him too. But the thing is in that situation, you have to understand you're a rookie and you're kind of getting like the second come around, right? Like we tried you early, you made some mistakes. Allow us in practice, you'll get back in the flow, and then what happens? He gets in there. He trips a little bit over Tristan Wirfs or falls down, whatever it was, and then they throw the ball to him and he drops it. You know, he's not helping himself.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to give you 5 plays, you got to be perfect on those 5 plays to get 10, right? To get more.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like if you look at Scotty Miller, like he had 2 targets last week. One of them was a 48-yard touchdowns, and then your snap count article on PeterReport.com this morning, John. How many snaps did he get this week? Right,
almost tripled, up to 13. Yep.
Yeah.
So you're right. You got to make your snap count. If you want more, you got to make them count. And Keyshawn Vaughn has just not done that this season. Yeah. And so again, I'm actually I want to see what Keyshawn Vaughn can do next year. I do. I want to see what he can do on this team. I don't want to go into him as the guy for sure. You know, I mean, obviously Ronald Jones will be here, and you know, Fournette and McCoy, I'm sure will not be.
But it's really those 2 guys right now. I mean, the only 2 guys that are guaranteed to be in this backfield are Keyshawn Vaughn and, of course, Ronald Jones, who will be entering, John, his contract year.
Yeah, and obviously you're not resigning him. So I can address that right now. We're not resigning Ronald. I don't care if he runs for $2K next year.
Right. I just saw on Twitter, and I forgot who it was. It might have been Pro Football Talk's Michael David Smith, and I think D. Orlando Ledbetter, who's the Falcons beat writer, retweeted it, and it's like Todd Gurley's making $5.5 million this year, and Brian Hill makes $2.1 million, and Ito Smith is making $760,000, and Ito Smith's the guy out there getting the carries and being the featured back, right?
Right.
So it's just a waste of money.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree, and I wrote about this in my Fab Five, and I'm going to say it again, even the fact that Rojo's 4th or 5th in rushing, whatever he is right now. You don't pay running backs, you draft them. And the one thing about Seattle that I really admire, the reason why Seattle's always had a pretty strong running back game is because it's just a conveyor belt of running backs. Everywhere from the 1st round with Rashad Penny to the 7th round with Chris Carson, they will draft a running back every single year, sometimes even 2 in the same year. In those years, John, where they have 9 or 10 picks, they'll draft 2 running backs. And, you know, and they burn them and churn them. But the thing is they never pay them.
Yep.
And that's the beauty of it. And they always have somebody in the stable. They always have somebody raring to go. And it might, Chris Carson's better than Rashad Penny, who was the 1st round pick.
Right.
So
it might, and they overdrafted the heck out of Penny, but you're right.
Yeah.
Like, which again, they broke their own philosophy in doing that. I mean, I know it's not paying the running back necessarily, but that's still, I mean, that's a 1st round contract to a running back who won a team that is consistently churned them out from wherever they got them. So I don't know what they were thinking with that pick, but you're absolutely right. They are terrific at finding
right? Here's the one thing. If you draft a running back in the 1st round, right, and remember, the Seahawks drafted in the late 20s because they were a playoff team.
Right.
So it's almost like a borderline 2nd round pick. But if Penny were to hit and be the guy, then you could do the 5th year option for 1 more year. Then you get a starting running back potentially for 5 years. And I think that's kind of what they were hoping and thinking, is if this guy can come out of the gate and be the starter by year 2, we could have this guy for 4 more years as our starting runner. And then once he's, used and abused, then you discard him at age 27, 28, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have somebody else in the hopper coming up behind him.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the process, and that's what the Bucs need to follow. Billy's exactly right. Billy says here, and we appreciate the super chats, Jack and Steve. I'll get to your question in a second, but Billy says, scout them pass catching running backs this year. He's exactly right. Arian said it at the combine to us this past year. Was like the first question I asked him on the Bucs beat was what traits he looks for in a running back when he's scouting him. He said, I think you can teach him protection. You got to teach him all that. Everybody can run it, but they got to be able to catch the football. And I mean, big swing and a miss on that this year. The Bucs, I tweeted about today, Scott, 15 drops from their running back room with 2 games left to go in the season. Yep. No other team has more than 11 this year. Cowboys have 11 between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. I don't think another team is even in the double digits this season. Then last year,
by the way, you got a quarterback who loves throwing the ball to running backs.
So it's, even more, it hurt the offense even more, but 15 drops between the 4 of those guys this season. And the last time a team had more was 2017. The last time a team was even close to 15 was 2017. 49ers dropped 16. So the Bucs can eclipse that. It is a bad mark to eclipse. It has not been good for them in this capacity. And we haven't even gotten to the fact that they hardly ever make people miss or pick up yards after the catch. And so it needs to be overhauled basically from a pass catching perspective. It'll be a priority the offseason. It doesn't need to be an expensive priority. There are lots of guys who can do this. It just happens that none of them are on the Bucs.
Right. Exactly. Speaking of running backs,
what their ceiling is.
Yeah.
Tristan Wirfs' ceiling is the best tackle in the NFL.
Yeah. And he can do that. I think that he can become the best right tackle. And I think he could become a damn good left tackle, but he could be the best right tackle in the league. He's really close already.
Right, because there's not that many great right tackles. There's a few great right tackles, but you get through the top 5 or 6 right tackles, it falls off pretty quick. There's more good left tackles because teams were starting to put their best tackle on the left side for years. Then defenses were like, oh, let's put our best pass rush on the other side. Now the right tackles are starting to catch up, but it's still kind of a trend. Like you're seeing more depth at right tackle every year, but it's taken a while. It's been a transition period for right tackle. And I would say right tackles honestly have the harder assignments typically in pass protection. Now the quarterback can see, so maybe the quarterback's able to move a little bit more and help them. Right. But I still think quarterbacks mostly feel and see edge pressure too. The depth of their drop, they're seeing it from both sides really. So I consider them equal value, right and left tackle. And I think Wirfs can be absolutely the best one in the league. We talked about him for the Pro Bowl too, Scott. Yeah. And what's interesting about Wirfs' conversation, and I wrote this today, I wrote over at pewterreport.com. You can go check it out. I wrote about the Bucs that should and shouldn't make the Pro Bowl. In my opinion, 4 guys should make the Pro Bowl. 4 guys shouldn't make the Pro Bowl that are probably being considered for it. And one of the guys I said shouldn't was Wirfs, not because of his level of play. He's played at a Pro Bowl level. He's the only guy on the shouldn't list that I said I thought he played at a Pro Bowl level. The only issue with Wirfs right now is that if you look at the other guys, it's like an unbelievable year for offensive tackles, especially in the NFC. Bakhtiari, Trent Williams, Taylor Decker, Detroit, who the Bucs are playing next week, has had a terrific season. Teron Armstead for the Saints. There's just so many players that are having unbelievable years, and those guys are just like a little more tenured, and you're taking 3. And I do think there's something to be said for Brady's ability to feel pressure and get the ball that helps tackles too. And some of the other guys definitely don't have that on the teams they play on. So there's a lot to consider. I would be fine with Wirfs making it, obviously, but the NFC is unbelievable at tackle this year. There are so many good ones.
Great point. That's a great point. So here's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to running backs. And yes, the Buccaneers, a little birdie told me, are looking at pass catching running backs in the draft. And there's a couple of really quality ones. We were kind of man crushing the other night on Najee Harris from Alabama.
He's good.
Travis Etienne. I don't think the Buccaneers are going to go that high for a running back, but my gosh, if they did, that certainly would be a player that could fit in nicely. You talk about an impact player. One thing else that we should bring up it's interesting is in free agency, and it's going to be a really weird year in terms of free agency. If you went back and read my SR's Fab 5 about the future forecast, you'll know that the Buccaneers are about $32 million over the salary cap right now. Why that sounds good, that's fine. There's a lot of free agents on this team, a lot of high price guys. Sure. Guys like Vontae David, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett. Those players are not under contract. So that $32 million is going to get eaten up like that. The other thing is the cap is dropping from $198 million to about $175, $176 million. So instead
We're
of going,
guessing, yeah. That's the floor, I think, right?
Correct. So they're going up $10 million. It could be dropping about $23 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real negative thing. But it's worth noting, and Anthony Papp 1 mentions James White, the Patriots running back, who is a supreme pass catcher out of the backfield. Matter of fact, 3 running backs that Tom Brady's thrown the ball to that were Patriots or are Patriots, Rex Burkhead and Deion Lewis included, are also available in free agency. So Tom Brady could be reunited with one of his guys from his New England days, John, and they might have a situation where they draft a running back to eventually replace Rojo, but then also sign a running back to help them out immediately in another quest for a Super Bowl push with a guy like White or Lewis or Burkhead that can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Clearly, it's a position they feel like they want to stockpile people, and I don't think that's going to change next season. They recognize Rojo is not a desirable 3-down guy. And maybe he becomes that next season. I mean, I'm not ruling anything out. It would be crazy, but I think the biggest issue is, this is a situation where they know we've got to get guys to help share the load with Rojo, not necessarily the running load, but some of the pass catching duties, and they feel fine splitting those duties between other guys. So that's how they view the position, and that's why I think they're guys like James White and Rex Burkhead will be in consideration for the Bucs for sure.
How about Antonio Brown? We had a question here. Do you think that Antonio Brown will be back next year? If you had to bet, John, money, where would you do it?
No chance. I just don't know how he could be. I mean,
I'm just saying, if you had to place a bet, if you had to wager, where would you do it at?
Oh, where would I do it? I would definitely do it at MyBookie, Scott. And
you know what? We're going to read the MyBookie read right now. Then we're going to answer Hezo813's question. So you probably know this, right? You can look at the calendar and you can tell it's the most wonderful time of the year. Can't get here soon enough. We all deserve a win. The Bucs got one yesterday. And we all deserve a little extra money in our pocket too, maybe in our stocking even. We all deserve to have a chance to have a little fun. The only place you're guaranteed to get all three is at MyBookie. They're the only sports book that doesn't care whether you've been naughty or nice this year. They've got gifts for everyone. You can bet on the NFL right now. You can bet on the college bowl games right around the corner. We just had the NHL schedule drop. Actually, not the schedule, but John, they've really reconfigured the NHL into those 4 different divisions, and we're going to have the schedule sooner rather than later. The NHL and the NBA are set to start in January, so even more stuff to bet on, in addition to college basketball, which is underway. So if you want to place your bets, do it at one place, mybookie.ag. Sign up today and receive the ultimate stocking stuffer. It's a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. It's a great place to start, but we all know that Christmas is about getting those presents under the tree. And at MyBookie, that means a huge deposit bonus, epic giveaways, and free contests. It's simple. Sign up, enter the promo code PEWTER, and get your deposit matched halfway up to $1,000. Head over to MyBookie to make the most of the holidays this year and strut into 2021 with some extra cash in your pocket. This winter, bet with the best, bet with MyBookie, and use the promo code PEWTER when you do. So, John, having said that, I don't think there's a prop bet quite yet about Antonio Brown's return to Tampa Bay. But what do you think? Do you think that they would have Antonio Brown back next year?
No, you can't give the guy guaranteed money. I mean, that's with the whole offseason between him and next season being in the Bucs facility, you just can't do it. I mean, and plus you're going to prioritize Godwin, and eventually, I mean, Scotty Miller's ready, like he was ready and playing great, and then you signed AB, and I get it. You're trying to make a run this year. I understood why they did it. I just didn't think it was necessarily worth the risk. I still feel the same way. Again, it's not been disruptive to the team so far. That's great. I hope that continues, but I think Scotty Miller would have been great for this team too. And, the one thing AB brings, like I've said, is the ability to make people miss after the catch. That is not really a trait the Bucs have had in most of their wide receivers on this roster. So that's something he's brought, and I think he's done a pretty solid job of that. And so I like that. How do you feel about the offensive play calling yesterday? Really like the use of play action and the quick release plays in the second half. They were unstoppable. Scott, I don't know if you saw this today, but I was sending this to the group chat. for the Pewter report, that I looked at the stats for play action, and the Bucs ran play action on more plays than they had all season in a game. But they were very unsuccessful on play action. It was the outlier game of the year. Yeah. They finally actually went to double-digit play action passes, and there were 12 of them. And it was successful for them in this game. I mean, there were certain instances
they should run it more often, so they practice it more in games, and it becomes more successful, right? The more you do it, the better you are.
I mean, yes, right. Clearly an outlier. An outlier based on the larger sample size. But it was, I think Brady was 3 for 12 on play action passes, and he only had 14 incompletions all game. So you do the math. Mike Evans, one of those was a drop by Mike Evans on a play action pass. We have to look at 8 unsuccessful plays off play action. I've looked at about half of those so far, and pretty much every single one, Josh Wells is getting beat like a drum, and that's why the play didn't work. I mean, Brady's turned around play action, and pressure's literally right in his face. So the Grady Jarrett sack at the end of the game was a play action, and Josh Wells gets beat. And in the first half, most of those were in the first half where they were, that wasn't working at all. They stuck with it in the second half, came out, hit a 20-yarder on the play, the second half play action. There were certainly good things off play action. Atlanta being able to defend deep the way that they did off play action was good by them, and it was good for the Bucs that Brady didn't force it into those windows early on in the game. Instead, took some stuff underneath a couple times, or at one point the ball, I think, threw the ball away maybe twice on play actions where Wells was beaten and he had to get rid of it. So there was kind of it could have been worse results because of the way it was defended early in the game. Then later in the game, they started getting better results off of it. But yeah, it's the play action. I think Haley's right that that the play action was a good call, and I think that they came out with a good game plan in this game. I actually really liked the play calling for the most part in this game. There were a couple instances where, again, they got back to these runs on first down that wasted plays. The screen, I don't mind the play call, but execution has been so bad all year, and I do think that does go back to coaching to a degree. But there were a lot of things I liked in this game about the way the Bucs attacked the Falcons. Remember, they moved into Atlanta territory twice on drives in the first half. They had them stall out. There were some issues with protection that they cleaned up at halftime. The Falcons did some things I think they weren't expecting. But I do think from a play calling perspective, they approached the game the right way. Not everything worked and clicked in the first half, but they really didn't deviate from it a ton other than answers to pressure. They had different answers to pressure in the second half, and that's really what kept them from those negative plays that plagued them in the first half.
John, it's really interesting. Eric Cullison brings up something. Khalil Davis needs to learn and step up. Jeremiah Ledbetter is a good backup, but hasn't flashed enough to be a starter. Well, the interesting thing is this, John. This is something you noted. We talked about in our PR group chat. Khalil Davis saw a pretty sizable amount of snaps as that rotational defensive lineman inside against the Rams.
Chiefs, I think.
Against the Chiefs, against the Chiefs.
Chiefs, right.
And then against the Vikings, it was Pat O'Connor who got a sack. And then this game, it was Jeremiah Ledbetter. It's just kind of unreal. It's been like a bit of a 3-card Monty between those 3 players. It's a rotational thing. And the interesting thing is maybe Ndamukong Suh returns next year. He's actually having a pretty good year. I think he's having a better year this year than he did last year. He's more comfortable in this scheme. But gosh, it's like he's going to be 33 years old next year. They can't afford him at $8 million. Even if he gets talked into coming back at $5 million, you only have him for 1 more year. If Davis is a guy that flashes with his quickness, I'm just surprised that at this point he hasn't shown enough to become that kind of permanent third wheel in that rotation behind what's really it's the fourth guy. But inside you've got McClellan, you've got Raheem Nunez-Roches and Suh, and I'd like to see Khalil Davis get some more playing time, especially because he didn't have a preseason. He's a rookie.
I completely agree. It's a great point by Eric. I am very confused as to the approach. I'm not saying it's not the end of the world, but this fifth defensive tackle who's active for these games is typically playing 18 to 23 snaps last couple of weeks a game. So that's a decent chunk. You're asking them to get some pressure, and Khalil Davis has played the best at all those guys. Pat O'Connor's done some good things. Jeremiah Ledbetter's honestly done some good things. I don't think any of those guys have been bad. So it's not like it's killed them, going all 3. I just don't understand it. I don't like Khalil Davis in my mind didn't do anything watching him on tape to not earn more reps. And then I think he's been inactive the last 2 weeks. And and other, and Pat O'Connor played well, got his first career sack. I mean, he was playing fine, you know what I mean? And then he's inactive and Ledbetter's up. And I think Ledbetter played fine too. It's just weird. I don't understand, and he's right. Like, you need players to develop. The two oldest defensive tackles in the NFL to take a snap this season are Steve McLennan and Ndamukong Suh. Like, you got to start developing some of your younger players.
There's a chance that neither one of those guys is in Tampa next year. You can't count on him. Certainly not McLendon. I think he's a kind of a rental player this year, and then he'll probably retire.
Suh probably retires or comes back to Tampa in a year was kind of where Greg and I were at the other day when we talked about it. But again, like, you don't want really Ndamukong Suh playing every passing down like he has to this year without Vea. You'd love to keep him way more fresh and have other, bodies that you can rotate in that can give you something on passing downs. So the Bucs defensive line is the top priority in the offseason, in my opinion. Like, they have to get younger. They have to get more athletic. I think they took that step with Khalil Davis. They knew it wasn't as big a priority. They had other things that they had to get in the draft, and they did. Can't fill every need every offseason. But I think Davis is a step in the right direction.
What can happen, Khalil Davis, if you don't play him?
Exactly right.
I don't understand why he's playing as opposed to Ledbetter. Maybe I gotta send that question up the totem pole at $1 in your place. How about Josh Wells, John? How did he do? Brandon Stump 8 wants to know. Didn't seem like there was much drop off from Smith to Wells. The one thing that I will point out is the Falcons' defensive line. They didn't have Marlon Davidson. Dante Fowler has been a shell of his former self. He has not been the impact player they'd hoped. This is a Falcons team that does not really have much up front other than Grady Jarrett, who plays inside, not against your left tackle. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, there's 2 failed first-round draft picks, Tack McKinley and Vic Beasley, who aren't even in Atlanta anymore. So they really don't have the edge guys that are really going to test a player like Josh Wells, although Wells did give up a sack, right, on the play-action pass.
Yeah, no, he was okay. He didn't get him killed. He was, the play action stuff he really struggled with, which is really ironic because that's usually like in there to help offensive linemen, and give the Falcons some credit. They did kind of tee off against the Bucs play action. I think they just didn't really care if they were going to overrun it in the run game, especially without Ronald Jones in the game. So I think they did kind of make it. I think they surprised him a few times, surprised the Bucs in general a couple times with the way that they just kind of blasted upfield off play action. There weren't muddy run reads. They were just kind of, we're going to stop the Bucs passing game or else. So that disrupted it for a few guys. Wells I wouldn't say he played well. 5 pressures in the game, gave up a sack. But he was good enough, especially like on some of the straight dropbacks. He was good enough for sure. And like you said, the Falcons don't really have starting caliber edge defenders other than Fowler. And man, he is a shell of himself. Watching him was just like, I don't even know if this guy wants to be out here. He's always been kind of a roller coaster dude. Yeah. So I don't know if he even wants to be out there or whatever. But yeah, I think that was kind of one of the keys in the game was Wells not being bad enough to kill them, And so obviously I want Donovan Smith back, but he held his own in this one against some lower level competition. And honestly, I don't know what Smith's situation is, but the Lions aren't a great pass rushing team either. And so it's kind of like they finish up the season against some weaker teams. So if there's game to be without Smith, it's probably these ones. Yeah.
So Terrence Davis asked John and Scott, can you guys think of any reason why Carlton Davis and other corners are playing 12 to 15 yards off so much? Well, I think 15 yards is an exaggeration. It's more like 10 yards sometimes, but that's still a concern. I don't understand the fascination, the crush that Todd Bowles has with playing zone coverage so much. And playing zone's one thing, but gosh, playing 10 yards off, it just, you know what? If you had Brent Grimes playing 10 years off, where he's a very instinctive guy in his prime that loves to jump routes, he likes to set up guys by playing off and then, reading the quarterback's eyes and having that quick initial burst, that quick twitchiness to make a play, that's fine. Carlton Davis is not that kind of player at all. Neither is Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean is a straight line guy. He's not even like a quick shifty guy that has that ability to backpedal, transition, and then come up and make a play. To his credit, he did that against the Packers. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he can't do it to the degree that some of these smaller, shiftier cornerbacks can. Sean Murphy-Bunting is the same way. The bottom line is whether Sean Murphy-Bunting at Central Michigan or Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis at Auburn, they played in a press man scheme. That's what they do best. And you know what happened in the fourth quarter? And Bruce Arians even talked about it today in his press conference, John. They played a little bit more man. Now, they played a lot more man in the second half, and it worked, especially in the fourth quarter, because Matt Ryan was holding on to the ball. Because you go back and look at the All-22 in that fourth quarter, it was absolutely just completely locked down. A couple of those sacks that Devin White had, there was nowhere for Matt Ryan to throw the ball to. And I just don't understand why this team doesn't play more man coverage, because it's what these players do best.
Right. It's I think one of the most curious things is the lack of press. Like you said, even if you're going to press bail, it helps you just in terms of giving looks to different quarterbacks, at the line of scrimmage, they're anticipating routes beforehand. So when you're playing off, as much as the Bucs play off, they know kind of some easy stuff to get them going. They're going to go to certain routes that are going to be free yards on those plays. I'm not saying you never play it, but on 1st and 10, on second and shorter, on 2nd and 7, things like that. Like, it's got to be situational. Like, so the Bucs have a great press man corner in Carlton Davis, and he's been awesome this year for the most part when he's asked to play press, but he's just rarely asked to play it. He doesn't play press very often this season. And so because of it, he's been in some really, really difficult spots. Again, you have to give some level of ground against vertical releases. But if you're an off and they break that route off and they're a guy like Calvin Ridley who can change directions like that, like, there's just not money. I mean, you have to be Jair Alexander type closing burst on the ball to make a play. It's just you just aren't put in position to succeed.
The thing is the Bucs had Brian Kelly back in the day, and he was tremendous at jamming. And granted, they played a lot of Tampa too. It wasn't man that much. And Brian Kelly was a man corner at USC, but they used him in the Tampa too. And the reason why he was so effective as a man corner playing zone is because part of that Tampa 2 is you reroute the receiver, especially inside. You push him towards the linebacker and the safety, and you disrupt that timing. You don't give that guy free release. And Brian Kelly, there were times where he literally just stoned guys at the line of scrimmage. They could not get off the line. And when you've got some guys like Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean that have long arms, they're both 6'1", I'm shocked that they don't do more press man at the line of scrimmage and just rerouting guys. And if you're gonna play zone, then at least get up there and jam it. But they don't do that. They give them this cushion, and it's kind of frustrating. As we're winding down this podcast, John, if the Eagles move on,
can we touch on the I want to touch on the Sean Murphy-Bunting topic right before we switch gears to Wentz, just because I think this ties in exactly what we're talking about. Do the Bucs go to the draft again if they decide to replace Sean Murphy-Bunting or free agency? Very interesting question, because they really want to believe in Sean Murphy-Bunting. But I asked Bruce Arians straight up today, like, about Sean Murphy-Bunting. What's his level of play? Like, it seems to us like he's struggled. And Bruce, I give him credit for this. Like, he's answering our questions at least. I know people are like, oh, he throws players into the bus. I don't think that's it. Players love Bruce Arians. I'm not worried about, what he says to the media affecting them. Like, but I think he's on, he was like, we expect him to play a lot better. And I think that's a fair way. If you can't say that as a head coach, like, what are we even doing with these press conferences? Right. Like, it's better than Todd Bowles saying he's been awesome for us this year. Like, we know that's not the case. So, like, you're not helping anyone. Like, you know what I mean? So I appreciate him saying it. And I think he said good things about Sean, but he also said he's got to play better. And I think that's the reality. Like, it can't go into next season with him as the guy. I mean, you have to have at least competition for him. And obviously, I think Dean, you do right. He's got to fix some things, but his things are fixable, and he makes high-end plays on the ball. He's shown instincts. He's shown a ton of promise. You haven't even seen even Murphy-Bunting's highs are really not that high, Scott. So I'm just not sure what you're betting on.
My concern is Jamel Dean is built like an outside corner. I think he's a better outside corner than Sean Murphy-Bunting is. And of course, that's where Carlton Davis thrives, in the outside. In my opinion, those are your two outside corners. I think Sean Murphy-Bunting is an outside corner. I think he's a better outside corner than he is in the slot. And because there's just too much going on, there's too much to read and process in the middle of the field than there is down the sidelines. And so, in my opinion, I think they need to go get another cornerback, but one that really can play the slot and really challenge Murphy-Bunting. And if Murphy-Bunting ends up being the third outside cornerback in the rotation, then okay. But I think you have to draft a guy next year and challenge him. Speaking of next year, Carson Wentz, did the Eagles move on from Carson Wentz, and would he be a good heir apparent to Tom Brady? Right now they've got Josh Rosen.
Wow. This is a question I didn't imagine if we would have fielded this question, Scott.
Yeah.
the beginning of the year, you could not have paid me to think that
Right.
we would get this one. There's just no way. I mean, first of all, Wentz's contract is ridiculous. He's immovable unless he were like to literally like say, I don't know if you can sign something and say like I'm out of my contract. And if he does that, it's only to go somewhere to start. Right. So it's just not going to happen. It's just a non-starter. You know, I mean, ideally, you know, you'd want somebody talented as your backup, you know, and young. But yeah, it's not going to happen in Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
and I know Eric asked about Josh Rosen too, and we don't really know. He's not getting to play much right now, even in practice. So there's not much to report there.
He's a practice guy playing the opponent's defense. He's not even running Bruce Arians' offense in practice. So it's really hard to evaluate what he can do in the Bucs offense because he's not running the Bucs offense. Mm-hmm. Nate Pitts, I wish PR Livestream was going the day that Winston threw all of his picks versus Cincinnati 2 years ago. Mark lost his mind in the pod. That is cool.
Remind me of this game. How many picks were in this game?
I think he threw 4, including a pick 6. And
Cincinnati?
Yes, against Cincinnati. It was a game they should have won. And
it
was
Cincinnati.
Awful. It was an absolute meltdown game. The funny thing is, I think I texted Jason Light on first down, and I said, this is during the game. I know I texted the PR staff, but I think I texted Jason and I said, pick 6 coming here, you know, because the Bucs were backed up. Like,
bro, you got credibility to say that to Jason. I would never be saying that. I'd get blasted.
Maybe I said that after the game. I don't know, but I remember texting the group chat for sure, and I just came out on first down, and he'd already thrown I think 3 interceptions at that point, and I just said, this is it. He's in the downward spiral. I've seen this movie before. It just starred Trent Dilfer back in the day. This is the remake with Jameis Winston, and it's called The Downward Spiral.
Scott, there's still people out there trying to make arguments each and every week about how Jameis Winston would have been lighting it up better than Brady for the Bucs this year. It's pretty – Twitter is an incredible, incredible place. Jameis, one of one, that psychopath was in my mentions this past week. Oh, my, that man.
Yeah.
He needs help. I hope he gets it. Ryan Fitzpatrick led a daring comeback that fell short, 37-34. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the last time the Steelers played them. He was out there, and that was a heck of a game. I mean, that game was back and forth the whole way. That was the Vance McDonald stiff arm game on, was it Chris Conti? Oh my!
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that ended Conti.
They photoshopped Trevor's face onto Conti after the game, and my face onto Vance McDonald.
Jameis Winston that game. Just to recap the Bucs Bengals game. The Bengals won 37-34. Ryan Fitzpatrick came in, and the Bucs were down 27-9 at halftime, and the Bucs scored 18 points in the fourth quarter, but just came up short. They outscored the Bengals in the second half 25-10. But see, they didn't have Tom Brady engineering that comeback. Right. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was 11 of 15 for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns at the end of that game, but it just was not enough for the Buccaneers. Mike Evans had a huge day, 6 catches, 179 yards, including a 72-yard touchdown. Even Deshaun Jackson had a 60-yard touchdown catch from Jameis Winston that day. But yeah, that was that was kind of the Fitz magic, the beginning of Fitz magic. That was
a little run there, yeah.
Yeah. He had his run in Tampa. It was interesting for sure. Good guy. Yeah. You know, I'm glad that he's still playing to a degree. You know,
right? Yeah, exactly. No, I think there was good. Nate says here, need to get Trevor on the live stream. Somebody commented this earlier, and they said they were terrified. You know, the Bucs went down 17-0 in the first half, and Trevor was in Tampa Bay area yesterday. He had flown in that morning, and they were like, "This is it. If the Bucs don't come back and win this game, he's never coming back." Yeah. I was thinking that during the game. I was like, if the Bucs lose, I'm gonna have a heck of a tweet ready for Trevor for being in this state today. But they came back and won, so which I'm happier about.
Got to get out of here, Trevor. Get out of here.
But Trevor will get on the live stream. We'll have him on.
Yeah,
don't worry
we'll
about
definitely have him on. Gary Buff, you guys had a meltdown last year after Carolina or the Texans game. I think it was the Texans game. Yeah, I think it was the Texans game. It was bad after the Panthers game, but I wasn't on the podcast for that. Actually, Mark and I were in London flying back, so I know that wasn't the game, but it was It was the Texans game. That was a game where Winston also threw 4 picks, including a pick 6, and they should have won that game. So, and yes, the good news is Terrence is right. Yes, with Tom Brady, you finished the daring comebacks against bad teams. They've done it against the Chargers, the Panthers, and now the Falcons, John. And
hey, they almost did it against the Chiefs. We're going to come back. We're going to come back and talk about that second half at some point in the offseason, because there was a lot of good things there. You know, again, like I think they had some really unlucky moments in that game. I just think that the Chiefs are a good team that they match up better with than a lot of people think. I mean, defensively, they're, you know, hope and a prayer. But again, it's about what the offense can do. And when you're playing Kansas City, it's about really what the offense can do. And I think the Bucs can honestly do a lot of good things. They just had a couple unlucky moments in a game where they really moved the ball well for the most part. So anyway.
And the thing is I had a couple of unlucky moments with my previous insurance company. And then you know what I did, John? I called Briar Greaves. I did. I called Briar Greaves, and all of a sudden my fortunes turned around. You know, a lot of homeowner companies are canceling. They're not renewing their policies. Some of them are even leaving Florida and leaving homeowners stranded, or they're increasing premiums significantly. Call Briar Greaves and speak directly to Briar or Sam for a personalized touch for information on the best rates. Call Briar Greaves. You can also find them on the web at briargreaves.com. They're a family-owned and operated business that has served the greater Tampa Bay area for over 30 years. And not just for homeowners, but for auto owners, for boat owners, for life insurance policies, for commercial insurance, and even for flood insurance, which is a big thing here in the state of Florida. The folks at Briar Greaves Insurance, they're big fans of the Pewter Report podcast. So if you call them up and say, hey, Briar, hey, Sam, I am Scott Reynolds, and I listen to the Pewter Report podcast even when I'm not on. And I listen to John and Greg Allman from last Thursday. And they're going to start talking Bucs football with you. Then you're going to say, hey, this is awesome, but tell me about your insurance rates. And they're going to go, oh, yeah, we'll tell you about that too. So these are the guys to call. They're proud sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast. They're going to take great care of you, just like they took great care of me. And all you got to do is give them a call, 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. Or visit that cool website, briargreavesinsurance.com.
All right, Scott, we got draft questions. I know we're about out of time for the show, but Eric Collison wants to know, is the tackle from Virginia Tech a left tackle? Only from what I've seen, but I have to watch a lot more, Eric. I'm going to be honest. Like I literally said when everybody was opting out and college football was basically this abbreviated thing, you know, honestly, I was like, I'm going to watch it live when it's on and when there's good games, but I'm not watching Clemson playing, you know, whoever, you know, the bottom feeder team. I don't want to insult anybody's fan base. Bottom feeder team in the ACC, you know, 4 games out of the year and then having a draft take from it. Like, I'm going to have to go back and watch guys' tape from last year. You know, most of these teams have 1-2 good games against good competition. So there's just a lot of weeding through the mud. And last year I waited until draft season. I didn't have any takes going into draft season for the most part. I mean, obviously I seen Trevor Lawrence. He's good, you know, but I didn't have any takes. And I felt like it was easily my best draft as an evaluator. I mean, even just watching players this year, I felt like it was my best that I'd evaluated, because I didn't have those preconceived notions to kind of hang on to as I got new information. Psychologically, it was easier for me to kind of just say, okay, like I'm going in fresh and just kind of with all the information at once, being able to make decisions about how I feel about players. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it this year, trying to focus all in on the NFL and then shift gears to the draft. But we are going to have takes on takes. It's going to be a very, very fun offseason on the Pewter Report podcast. So again, make sure you're subscribed, Pewter Report TV, subscribe, hit the bell, get the notifications for when we go live. We're going to have an amazing offseason. 4 times a week, we're going to be bringing this podcast to you. We're going to be talking Bucs, free agency, trades, offseason, the future of the team, cap situations, and of course the draft, where we'll be scouting players, sometimes live on the show. We'll just be doing all kinds of stuff. We're going to have amazing guests. That's going to be the time of year, I think, where, you know, this time of year, you kind of know what we're going to talk about for the most part. You come in here to hear our opinions, but we're going to have all kinds of ground to cover in the offseason.
And you know what, John, I got to agree with you, because this year I'm probably as least prepped for the draft right now as I've been in maybe a decade. And the reason is
we got playoffs.
We got the playoffs to talk about. Usually I'm doing SR's Fab Fives in October, you know, looking at what potential top 10 picks the Bucs might be interested in. So it's refreshing not to have to dive into college yet. Sometimes I feel like we cover so much of that stuff in years past in November and December that we're kind of running out of material to write about in February and in March. We're not even into April, right, which is the month the draft is in, because we've already written about so many guys. So it's actually fun this year to see this team, try to make its way to the playoffs. And let's keep in mind, the Buccaneers, they might be picking in the 20s. They might be picking 30, 31.
Oh my.
All we know.
Let's go, Scott. He said 32.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Right. They're still eligible for the 32nd pick. So we'll have to wait and see. Christian Darrisaw is the guy you're talking about, the left tackle. And I've seen him play one time, and I'm impressed, but that's just one game. So I got to go back and dive into this stuff. And we're going to do a lot of that diving in, John, once the season's over. And you know what, John? This season might not be over until mid-January, late January, dare I say February. We'll have to see. But plenty of drafts coverage, just as John was talking about on the Pewter Report podcast and pewterreport.com. A quick reminder, we'll be back Wednesday with our famous Pewter prediction podcast. We got Bucs Lions this week to talk about. It's a familiar opponent. They played the Lions last couple of years, including last year in Detroit. Sean Murphy-Bunting had a big pick six in that game. Maybe he finds his confidence. So we have that coming up at 4 o'clock. There will not be a Thursday podcast because we're giving John Thursday off to wrap presents and spend time with his family on Christmas Eve. But we're going to be back on Saturday at 7:30. So that's when the Bucs play Saturday at 1 o'clock. If you're thinking about the Bucs playing on Sunday, don't, because they play on Saturday, day after Christmas. So we'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock, the Wednesday preview podcast, and then Saturday at 7:30 at night, recapping Bucs Lions. And hopefully by then, John, we can say the Bucs have clinched the playoffs.
Yep. 4 p.m. Eastern, Eric, is when we'll be going live on Wednesday. 4 p.m. Eastern is when we'll be live. So yeah, definitely come check us out as we preview that Lions game. Again, that's the big one, right, Scott? Because we've just touched on this briefly to close out the podcast. Bucs win against the Lions, and they win against the Falcons. They are in control here. For the 5th seed. They can win here and get a matchup in the first round. Some would call it favorable with the NFC East champ, who is probably going to be Washington unless something surprising happens. We'll see. I mean, Haskins is a quarterback right now, but again, I mean, I don't care. You don't want to play anybody in the playoffs. Everybody can say, "Oh, I don't want to face this team. I don't want to face." Right. You want to face Washington, you just do. I mean, it doesn't mean you'll win. It just means that's who you want to face. And so play them, and then you see how everything else shakes out. But again, you're looking at a situation where if all the high seeds win in the first round, the Bucs would be in the seed stay as they are now. Green Bay keeping the first seed, which they play Tennessee next week. So we'll see what ends up happening. But if you're looking at it that way, then the Bucs would be traveling to Green Bay in the second round. If they were to beat Washington, they would be traveling to Green Bay, who obviously they beat 38-10. I don't know if we'll expect a repeat score, but at the same time,
frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, and we want to appreciate everybody who gave the super chats today. We had a lot of those come in, especially Eric Cullison. Again, appreciate your service. Good luck with your deployment. Big Earn 849 gets the last super chat in of the day. I'm just here for the super chat recognition. We appreciate you always, Big Earn.
I brought up the Steelers today. Big Earn smarting a little bit. I'm sorry, Big Earn. But no, we appreciate you all so much. And we'll be back Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll have tons to break down in this Lions Bucs matchup that could be a playoff clincher for the Bucs. Exciting stuff on the day after Christmas. So make sure 4 p.m. Wednesday, you're back with us on the Pewter Report podcast. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in today for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.